If you look at page 206, H08 explains the G29 code for bed auto leveling, and it says it's got 3 procedures. Deploy the Z probe. That was a bit I told you about wiping across there. We manually do that. The software still carries it out, but it doesn't touch the bolts or anything like that. Then it probes, says the print bed at 37 locations, and it then retracts the Z probe. And it just shows you this little yellow box. Now this is the way the code's written in the CPP file, Marlin_main CCPP. It is more of the formulas for calculating and this sort of thing. So that's what that means. We then go up to the next page, deploy the Z probe, and it will tell you about the belt table and all this. This section here, designation X axis, Y axis, Z axis, even though they've got numbers there and they're different also to the software file. I changed them to 00 like I said before, and it had a bad effect. It didn't go down to the table, it stayed up here. So just leave them alone so you don't have to change that and it doesn't affect you. It says the important note, and it tells you our recommendation is to do a Z probe unlock by hand. So, but when you do it by hand, you actually move things. So when you do unlock, you then do a home. So whenever you're doing that, you might knock and I home so as it knows where it's supposed to be, and that's where it is. If you knock it, it's not where it's supposed to be, but it thinks it is. So home all the time. So you would unlock the probe. If it was in the front, it'd be easy. You have to turn around and make sure it goes down. And it doesn't hurt to always just push up and down to hear it click. Make sure nothing's jammed and all that sort of thing. And if you had used the limit switch circuit boards that I had mentioned as a change, you'd actually see them coming on and off. So maybe in the next printer I build my own design, a 3Dprint4A design, we'll have that up there. It tells you how to do the probe and all that. So we've got some measurements ready for that already. It then tells you, but this is where it says in Delta firmware value 26 is chosen, print radius, but it says its print radius is defined as 85mm. Ours is only 70. So what it tells you there is not correct. So it doesn't affect us. The principles are you have a measurement and it divides it up in a certain step and then it does the probing. So that's already in the actual software. The 70mm is already in there, and instead of having some of the figures they have here, they just have width divided by this number minus 1, and that will get you all these different steps. So that's H10, page 208. So some information there how it works. Don't worry about the numbers. But this has got define Z probe offset. That's what we did before. I'll show you the picture. It says X, Y, and Z. We already know those measurements. So remember how I told you the copy? Go into the config, do a search, paste, and then find it. With my changes, I've added an extra line for the actual changes. So I've added 2 lines in mine for the changes that I've made. So that's a record. So I've got the build date and time that I change every time I do a change. I add what the changes are and the line number. So the probe offset line 390. So yours might be 388. So around that figure, do your search and you'll find it. So 388. And we go down there. X probe offset from extruder. Now that was where on that line the center of the Allen key was to the nozzle. So mine was to the right of the nozzle by 0.4. And if you look at the graphic little button icon in pronto face, shows you. So just say the nozzle's in the center. If it's to the right of the nozzle, it's plus X. If it sits to the left of the nozzle, it's minus X. The probe sits behind the nozzle, so that's plus Y. So that's the figures. So there we've had our 0.4, then mine was 10.6 back. So your figures will be somewhere in that area. Might be 0, might be minus 1 or plus 1, say range for the X offset, 10, 11, this sort of pushes, depends on the angle of the probe and all that. So that may be, say, between 12 and 8, maybe even less. But then we got Z probe offset from the extruder. Remember that measurement we done? You enter that in, but that is adjustable. You have to test it after you do the cycles because it affects your 0 position for the Z height. Now we all set it, we've all got it all good, but with this dog chasing its tail, that bird that used to fly in circles, ever decreasing radius at ever increasing velocity, till it disappears. Well, that's what happens here. You fix one bit, good. Then you come back, you alter that, you have to fix that, good. Then you go. So that's why I've emphasised having that sheet, that setup sheet that's yours and it's got your dimensions. And you've added enough information, not just a number. You tell you what it is, what it's used for, what page in the manual it refers to, because that's very important. If you're not an elephant, your memory won't be that great. If you want to add any comments rather than upset the code, just do a backslash and then you can type in your text and it'll appear green. So I put in here, test after probing M114Z with nozzle on paper to be 0. So that is the check. So what happens is that once it probes, you then come over to the center and you go down and you need to measure the height. And you think, okay, go down to 5, but it isn't 5. It can be 3.2, 3.8. So you don't go down to 0 or you ram your table. So that's the adjustments you have to make. You have to counterbalance that, counterbalance this. So you put that in and we'll go back to the manual. You save that file at the moment. If you try to do that search for the defined Z probe offset in that format they've got there, you would have found that it doesn't come across, can't find it, because the coding here is also different to the coding there. There it has one code and an array of the figures. Here it's each figure. So you fill up those 3 lines, your X and your Y and your Z offset, and while we're here, you'll go down, you see Z rays before homing, rays, Z rays before probing, Z rays between probing. Some people have trouble with it probing and it curves and it scratches and it digs in and all this sort of thing. I increase those heights for safety. The more it moves, the more time it takes. So if you want to cut everything down to the millisecond, you can trim it all and run closer to the table and faster speeds. So what I done was I raised before homing to 10mm, raised before probing 100mm, and raised between probings 10mm. So change them while you're there, come up to the top, and I put that probe offset distances in there and raising home and what I changed it to and the line number. So do that and then hit change the date of your change and the hour, minute that you've changed it, and save it. So we've done that area. So now you know that that is a bit confusing because it's different figures and different coding, but that's solved now. For the Z offset, it needs to know 000, so it can come back and be out. So again, you may have trouble with the heights up here and calculations and all that, but we've gone through all those steps and fine-tune them as best we can till the next step. So now, this is the coding part. This is the Marlin Main CPP code. So it'll tell you the Z probe mechanism involved, on the cap screw, lifts the probe, dock position, touches it, and then you fine-tune. It says the XY coordinates indicate the position to place the Z probe tip before retraction. So in other words, that part there is that position and the height above it. So if you go to your main, I've added the changes. Probe setup L line 1027. This is the X and Y measurements we've done before, making sure they're under 70. So my X, and as we said, look at the graphic interface, the little buttons, the little diagram to show you where plus and minus X and Y are, so as you know what side it is. Minus 66 was mine in the X, and Y axis was 68.5. So that's only 1.5 mil to the max, and that's with that pushed around as much as I can. And I made my Z height 25 mil. Remember, that Z height is the height of the nozzle. Just because you measure that, everyone's taken from that Z height there. So 25mm there is that distance, and that distance away from 25 gives you that distance. So you have to make sure your clearance, which will say 15 before, and just say that was 10. That's where I got the 25 from. So you don't want the probe lower than the Allen key and it crashes into it and bends everything, then you're in big trouble. So make those changes on line 1027, 1028, 1029. 25mm is good for 1029, the Z-axis, but you need to put in your own figures for those two. We'll go back up the top and then save it. Put your dimensions in your changes area and the date and change it. You can do a copy, Marlin Main CPP, do a copy and then call it, original somewhere as a safety backup. So you have an original config and original main separate, then you can open them up and alter them, and then you stuff up. You can always go revert back to the last one. So that's what I've done. Put the changes, put the line number, date and the time. So that explains first block up here. They say leave this at 30. Now the next one is, remember when we're saying where the probe had to go, push the Allen key up in the lock position? Well, that is that area here. 1039, that dimension, it had to go down to reach to trigger it. So mine was 22 and I've got 19 on there. Mine was 22, and then they say on the next one to add 10 to whatever figure you put in there. So if you put in 20, this figure down here for the current position plus, you then put in 10 above. So if it's 20, you put in 30. If it's 19, you put 29. And for me, I put in 22, calculated 22, and I added 10 to make it 32. I put those changes in, do the date and time to the current, save both of those files, then go to the Arduino, upload them, and what I like to to do is just before I upload on the Arduino, I just click on the tab and it would say the config. I just have to look at the line at the top and I look at the time on the computer and I know, okay, that's a minute or so ago, that's the right one, I'm uploading the right one. Same with the mailer, I've got the date up near the top, changes up near the top, so I can look at it, click and say, right, great, there it is. So that's what you need to do to get that set. We've done the changes, we've done the testing, we've altered the software, and now we're ready to see the little machine dance.